Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith. I'll be providing our commentary for the duration of this coverage. We're broadcasting from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Stephen Young is running the technical operations of the broadcast, Adam Bernstein providing tracking views of the Falcon 9 tonight, and I'm Michael Kane helping out our moderators in the live chat. And our thanks, as always, to our wonderful mods helping us out tonight. So we have Stephanie B. and Drumwolf in the chat this evening. Hello to you both. I see here one of our other moderators, Astro Joe, also joining us tonight. Good evening, Astro Joe. Rock on to you, too. In the center of your screen, you're taking a look at Space Launch Complex 40, Slick 40. At the heart of it is a Falcon 9 rocket. In less than an hour, SpaceX will attempt to launch the Starlink Group 6-33 mission. This will be the 39th dedicated mission launching SpaceX's upgraded Starlink V2 mini satellites. SpaceX is targeting a T0 liftoff time of 12:07 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for this mission. For our viewers joining from around the world, that's 05:07 UTC. If you'd like to support our coverage of the space program, there's a quick and easy way to do that. Just by hitting the like button on this video and share the stream. Helps more folks find this live coverage and everything else going on with this channel. And naturally, we can't do these launch broadcasts without the support of our wonderful channel members and viewers like you. So thanks to everyone who's helped make a contribution to help fund our coverage. A couple of ways you can do that, like one of our regulars, Mel Roberts Harold, with a $5 super chat. Good to see you this evening, Mel. Says, don't know if I can stay awake this evening, but I'll give it a try. Never get tired of seeing these launches. We never get tired of having wonderful folks like Mel join us for these launch opportunities. So thanks to Mel. And using the super chat feature is also a great way to join in the conversation, support our coverage as well. Another way to do that is through channel membership. Channel membership grants you discounts at our online merch shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to our member-only videos, as well as live 4K views for all of the missions launching from the Cape, including this one, of course. And our thanks to Chuck Briggs as well, one of our friends helping tracking this launch tonight. Seeing a view from his camera here. The rocket standing amid the lightning protection towers surrounding it and the crew access tower just off to the left there. T-minus 54 minutes, 40 seconds and counting, less than 20 minutes away from the point at which the launch director will give the call for the start of propellant loading for tonight's launch. But because SpaceX is not providing mission audio, we will not hear that call out. Mission audio will start being piped in about 5 minutes before liftoff. But we will rely on our coverage experience of these Falcon 9 missions to lead us through the count. We'll let you know the mission milestones and the visual cues that we're watching for as we continue to march through the count tonight. SpaceX is running their countdown from its Hangar X site at the Kennedy Space Center here. It's the same facility where they refurbish Falcon boosters and prepare them for future flights, like the one being used tonight. This particular booster, tail number 1077, going for its 9th launch. We'll have much more on that as the countdown proceeds. Again, tonight's launch is targeting a T0 liftoff time at 12:07 a.m. Eastern, 05:07 UTC. They do have multiple backup opportunities overnight until 2:59 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, as long as they have not started fueling. Once they do begin fueling the Falcon 9 rocket, they are committing to that launch attempt. And so we'll be keeping a weather eye out for that. Taking a quick peek at the live chat, want to thank Daddy David for a $5 super chat. It says, great stream, I watch every time your stream. Well, thank you so much, Daddy David. Really appreciate the kind words and the super chat support. Glad to have you back with us. Talking about the weather. T-minus 52 minutes, 48 seconds and counting. As you can tell, the camera bobbing up and down a little bit. Can only tie it down so much, but it is quite blustery out here on the Space Coast this evening. We did have some stronger winds earlier tonight. They are starting to calm down, believe it or not. But there was a strong wind advisory that was issued earlier this evening that has since cleared. But the 45th Weather Squadron, in their launch weather forecast, while they did put the odds of favorable liftoff weather at 95%, the watch item for tonight is the liftoff winds. They also noted in the additional criteria that the upper level wind shear is tracking between low and moderate levels. But they did say that the winds would calm down as we continue to move throughout the launch window, so hopefully we're nearing a point at which things will be calm enough for a launch tonight. And I mentioned Michael and Adam earlier, two of our ace launch photographers. If you're not already following them on X, you really should. These are their handles to keep up with all of their photography pursuits, both for the launch tonight as well as other endeavors down the road. You can also follow Spaceflight Now, just at Spaceflight Now. T-minus 50 minutes, 28 seconds and counting as we are getting through the countdown tonight. Let's go ahead and take a look at the overview, the milestones that we're watching coming up in the next 50 minutes. T-minus 38 minutes, it's when the launch director will make the call on the start of propellant load. Again, we won't hear that call out, but if they do give the go-ahead at T-minus 35 minutes, that's when rocket-grade kerosene, or RP-1, will be loaded onto the first and second stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. At the same time, liquid oxygen will also start flowing aboard the first stage. It's followed up at T-minus 16 minutes by LOX loading on the second stage of the Falcon 9, but before that, we'll see the so-called big vent from the strongback. It's a good visual indication that fueling is on track. What's actually happening is the feed lines are being chilled prior to oxygen loading on the second stage. At T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines gets underway. It involves filling a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps, and it protects the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes out from liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strongback retract sequence begin. It'll begin with the clamp arms just underneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector, or the strongback, will recline about 1.5 degrees away from the Falcon 9. It stays in that position until liftoff, at which point it pulls back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. About 2 minutes out, liquid oxygen loading should be full, or done, at which point the Falcon 9 rocket will be fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. The propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director would give their go for liftoff. And the engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And if all 9 engines ignite and are healthy, the flight computer would give the command for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 at T0. Again, currently targeting just on the other side of midnight at 12:07 a.m. Eastern Time, 05:07 UTC. Now T-minus 47 minutes, 44 seconds and counting. Less than 10 minutes away from the point in which the call will be made on the start of propellant load. Taking a look back at our live chat, I want to thank Truth or Dare, I like the pun there, for a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Truth or Dare. They say, it's not much, but love these streams. I'm going to college to be an aerospace engineering space propulsion mechanic, which is very cool. Congratulations on that career choice. We wish you all the best, and perhaps we'll be reporting on some of your handiwork someday down the road. And any support is more than welcome. So $5 is a very kind offer, gesture. We really appreciate that. Best of luck throughout your collegiate endeavors, Truth or Dare. Kellen526 joining us with a $5 super chat. Good to see you as always, Kellen. With a great thumbs up, corgi in a kimono. Appreciate that. It's my favorite. Robert Santiana with a $5 super chat as well. Thank you so much, Robert. No message, but a show of support. We really appreciate that. And Sean joining us with channel membership, joining at the mission specialist level. Really appreciate that, Sean. And like our other channel members, now has access to those 4K streams, member videos, and discounts at the online shop. And while all that support is, of course, very much welcome and appreciated, another great way to support is just by hitting the like button. And just by being with us this evening. To the 3,000 of you that are joining us tonight, welcome. Glad you could be with us on a work and or school night tonight for many of us. Now T-minus 45 minutes, 16 seconds and counting. So we are now 10 minutes away from the start of propellant loading, assuming the go-ahead is given. Let's take a moment and talk about where this rocket is going once it leaves the pad. Let's talk trajectory, shall we? Falcon 9, of course, will be lifting off from the pad Slick 40, Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. We'll fly in a southeast trajectory towards the Caribbean. Following stage separation, the first stage will land on one of SpaceX's 3 drone ships. On deck tonight, they're using just read the instructions. The upper stage will continue on with the Starlink satellites. The fairing halves will jettison just a bit downrange of the map as well. SpaceX will be using one of its 2 East Coast recovery ships to scoop up those fairing halves. Tonight, they're using Bob. It and the other recovery ship, Doug, were named after former NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, the duo that flew aboard the Demo 2 mission back in May 2020, now both working in the private sector. I'm blanking on where Bob Behnken ended up, but Doug Hurley is over at Northrop Grumman these days. I want to thank our newest channel member, Sean, for a $5 super chat. Thanks, Sean. Says, I always love watching these streams and sitting on my porch in Melbourne watching it live. Need to go up A1A and see it closer. Well, you absolutely do, Sean, especially if you live as close as Melbourne. You know, on a clear night. I know it's getting a little chilly by Florida standards, but grab a good jacket and come on up to Jetty Park or somewhere along the beach, or go over to Kennedy Point Park. There's a lot of great viewing spots, of course. I'm sure you know all of them by now. If you have had the opportunity to join us here on the Space Coast for a live launch, let us know what your favorite launch watching spot is. I'm sure there's lots of folks here in the live chat joining us from various spots around the U.S. and around the world who may be quite interested if they are planning on a trip to Florida at some point in the near future, and they would love some advice on where some good launch watching spots are. Let's get that conversation going. T-minus 41 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. Let's take a moment, take a quick peek into the future. This will be the mission stats once this launch is in the books for SpaceX. This will be, as I mentioned, the 9th flight of this particular first stage booster. Tail number 1077. We'll run down its history in just a moment. This will be the 280th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 86th Falcon 9 launch of 2023. This will be SpaceX's 224th Falcon booster reflight. That is the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This is SpaceX's 90th orbital launch of 2023. The 97th orbital launch in the last 365 days. They're going to get real close to having 100 launches in 365 days pretty soon. That's the rolling average we keep, and we'll keep track if they are able to notch that 100. This will be SpaceX's 159th orbital launch from Pad 40, the 214th overall launch from this pad, and the 68th orbital launch from Cape Canaveral in 2023. That is, launches both from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station as well as NASA's Kennedy Space Center. And I mentioned the recovery of the fairing halves a little bit early when I was talking about the trajectory. This is what that happens to look like when they are scooping them out of the ocean and onto the recovery vessel. This was taken a little over a month ago when they were scooping up a fairing half that had flown 13 missions. And if you want a graphical representation of how far SpaceX has come over the last several years, here's a good bar chart from before tonight's launch. And of course, we'll update this as soon as this mission does lift off. Now, T-minus 38 minutes, 38 seconds and counting. About 30 seconds away from the point at which the launch director will give the go-ahead or make the call on the start of propellant load. And while we won't hear an audible call on that, here's what we're going to be looking for visually. If you take a look at the Falcon 9 rocket, near the bottom of the vehicle, you see where there's a little bit of change in gradient. So start with me at the base, at the tree line there. You see one of the black carbon fiber legs go up just a little bit from there, where the gradient changes from a darker gray to a lighter gray, right about the area where you see that color change. We'll start to see some frost forming at about T-minus 34, 33 minutes or so, as the liquid oxygen starts to be loaded onto the vehicle, and there's that temperature contrast from, it's not quite as warm and humid as it is some nights, but that's where we should see the frost rings start to form once fueling begins. So we'll keep a weather eye out for that. Now T-minus 37 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. Now T-minus 35 minutes, 24 seconds and counting. Less than 30 seconds away from when fueling is scheduled to begin, if the go-ahead was given just a few minutes ago. Taking a look at the live chat, I want to thank one of our channel members and regulars joining us for live coverage this evening, Norman Reitzel, with a $10 super chat. Thanks so much, Norman. Has a suggestion for Elon Musk and SpaceX, says they should use an insulated cylinder as a cold box to build an air rectification plant on site. You would get both liquid oxygen, liquid nitrogen, and argon and krypton for thrusters. I'm sure SpaceX is considering all their options to lower costs for future launches, so maybe Elon will be watching this stream tonight and check out the suggestion. Thanks for writing in, Norman. Janine Delasera, one of our other channel members, joining us this evening as we are getting confirmation from SpaceX that, yes, propellant load has in fact begun tonight. And they say that all systems and weather are currently go for launch, which is certainly good, as we're certainly watching the winds this evening. The American flag near the countdown clock here at the press site continues to blow quite profusely. But good to hear that the winds, sounds like, will not be preventative from SpaceX being able to launch tonight. As I was saying, Janine writing in with a $5 super chat. So it just says simply, "Hi, Will. Appreciate you." Well, we appreciate you, Janine. Thanks for being with us tonight. And Michael Colon with a $10 super chat says, "I really enjoy watching this stream." Well, thanks so much, Michael. We appreciate having you with us, and thanks for the support and helping us be able to do these live streams. And to all of the more than 4,400 of you that are with us tonight, we're glad to have you aboard as well. No T-minus 31 minutes, 45 seconds and counting. As we are preparing for the launch of the Starlink 6-33 mission. I mentioned this is the 9th flight upcoming of this particular booster, tail number 1077. So while we have some time, let's go ahead and run through the history of this particular booster. Its first launch happened to be on a crewed mission back on October 5th, 2022 for Crew 5, mission up to the International Space Station aboard the Dragon Endurance, or with the Dragon Endurance. The mission was commanded by NASA astronaut Nicole Mann, who became the first indigenous woman to go to space. This was also the first time a Russian cosmonaut flew to the International Space Station aboard a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft. Next up for this booster was a GPS satellite mission back on January 18th, 2023, launch of the GPS-3 Space Vehicle 6 satellite. These series of satellites, named after famous explorers manufactured by Lockheed Martin, SVO-6 was nicknamed Amelia Earhart. Launch number 3 came a month after that. It was on February 18th when this booster launched the Inmarsat 6 F2 satellite. However, back in August, Viasat released a statement saying that the F2 satellite, quote, suffered a power subsystem anomaly during its orbit raising phase. And for those not closely following all the happenings with satellite companies, Viasat acquired Inmarsat back in May of this year. Moving right along, the fourth launch of this booster, 1077, was on March 29th when it launched 56 satellites on the Starlink 5-10 mission. It was followed up by launch number 5 on June 5th when it launched a Cargo Dragon spacecraft on SpaceX's 28th commercial resupply services mission, sending more than 7,000 pounds of research and supplies up to the ISS. It also included a pair of rollout solar arrays. Sixth launch was on August 3rd when it launched the Galaxy 37/Horizons 4 satellite for Intelsat. This was part of the company's constellation refresh to meet FCC requirements. And finally, the 7th and 8th launches were both Starlink missions. Those were Starlink 6-13 on September 1st and Starlink 6-25 on October 30th. Now T-minus 28 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. A couple minutes ago, helium loading began into the pressure vessels on the first stage. The helium is used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Now T-minus 26 minutes, 47 seconds and counting. Taking a peek back at the live chat. I want to thank Curtis Hanger for a very generous $20 super chat. No message along with it, but thank you so much, Curtis. Really appreciate the support of our coverage here. And also want to thank Charles Boyer for a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Charles. He says, thanks always for the latest news and views of the launch. Hope you have some hot chocolate out there beside the VAB. Well, now that the weather is starting to cool off from Florida standards, might need to think about bringing up a tea kettle to have up here. Thank you so much, Charles. T-minus 25 minutes, 19 seconds and counting. In about 15 seconds or so, cryogenic helium loading will begin onto the storage tanks on the second stage. One of our channel members, Eric Scott, writes in, says, watching from York tonight. I'll be home in Florida for the heavy launch. Yes, we are, of course, tracking the progress of the Falcon Heavy rocket, which will be launching the X-37B space plane on behalf of the U.S. Space Force. That mission targeting liftoff this coming Sunday, December 10th. No official launch time has been given yet on that. But rest assured, as soon as we have that information, we'll be sharing that on our social programs. Now T-minus 22 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. No, just about a couple minutes away from the so-called big vent as fueling continues out there at the pad. Taking a look from Chuck Briggs for just a moment. There we go. Thank you, Stephen. Mentioned the chilly temperatures by Florida standards, although seeing some folks chatting in the live chat talking about what the temperature is like where they are. Matthew says it's a balmy 54 degrees Norman Beach, 40 degrees in Spring Hill. And one of our mods, Dremwolf, says it's 40 degrees in Jacksonville, and I am loving it. Those are his words. I did spend 4 years in Chicago as a Northwestern alum, but I will say I don't overly miss the cold. The snow was nice for a few days, I will say. I do miss brief stints with snow. But I digress. Now T-minus 20 minutes, 54 seconds and counting. About 30 seconds or so away from the start of the big vent there of the strong back as the feed lines are chilled. I want to thank Jeremy Latt for a $2 super chat. Says, I'm on my roof here in Cocoa and it is freezing. Well, hopefully you have some cocoa there with you in Cocoa, or some other warm beverage of choice. Maybe some hot apple cider. 'Tis the season. See the start of the big vent there from the strong back, it looks like. Taking a second to get going, but there it is. This will continue on for the next few minutes as the feed lines are chilled and SpaceX prepares to start loading liquid oxygen onto the second stage of the Falcon 9 at T-minus 16 minutes. Want to thank Hayden Cooper for a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Hayden. Says, pleasure to watch history with you all. Amazing stream, great narration. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas to everyone. And do we have a wind speed or limit for scrub? We're just conferring on the back channels here about the answer to Hayden's question. It depends on the direction of the wind, and we believe it's about 30 miles per hour. But again, it's depending on the direction, and there are some other factors that go into that. But generally speaking, there you go. Needless to say, SpaceX feels that they are within wind limits for liftoff in 18 minutes and 15 seconds. So hopefully conditions continue to stay sufficiently non-blustery as we get closer to a liftoff. Just 18 minutes out now. T-minus 16 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. Big vent starting to taper off here, coming to a conclusion as LOX loading will begin now in 30 seconds. Taking a look back at the live chat, Stephen Ross joining us this evening with a $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Stephen. That's very generous of you. Says, thank you again for all you do. You guys are awesome. Thank you again for all you do. You guys are awesome. Just repeat that message twice. Twice is nice. Thank you, Stephen. And Train Lover with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Train Lovers. Says simply, love the stream. And we certainly appreciate having you with us. As a lifelong train lover myself, I do love the name there. Grew up on Thomas the Tank Engine. A T-minus 15 minutes, 38 seconds and counting. Next milestone coming up will be the engine chill down sequence. That'll be at T-minus 7 minutes. One of our channel members with a very lovely message as we did make a Christmas shout out. John says, hello everyone and happy first night of Hanukkah to all of my Jewish space enthusiasts. And yes, to all who celebrate, happy first night of Hanukkah. Now that it is coming up on being the 7th in about 8 minutes or so. As we get closer to launch tonight, let's go ahead and talk about the rocket on deck tonight. The Falcon 9 vehicle, standing at 70 meters or 229 feet tall, with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet, most of which is made up by the first stage, the bottom 2/3 of the rocket. This particular booster, as we've discussed this evening, has flown 8 times before, going for flight number 9 tonight, tail number 1077. The base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines, which burn a combination of rocket-grade kerosene, or RP1, and liquid oxygen, or LOX, that produce 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship. On deck tonight, just read the instructions, waiting patiently for this first stage to arrive. Above the first stage is the inner stage. It is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core surrounded by carbon fiber. In the image on the right-hand side, you see those deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it falls through the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the second stage. At first stage, main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage, powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle, which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 23 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. The MVAC engine, same as the first 9 engines on the first stage, burns the same propellant mix, RP1 and LOX. It will ignite a 3rd time after the deployment of the Starlink satellites for a deorbit burn, driving the upper stage back into the atmosphere where it will burn up, eliminating the risk, creating unnecessary space debris on this mission. Last but not least, up at the very top, the payload fairings, which are housing the 23 Starlink satellites. The payload fairing made up of a carbon composite material. They are 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall. and 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The two halves of the payload fairing will be recovered a little further downrange from where the first stage lands on the drone ship. They splash down gently under parachutes. And as mentioned, the recovery ship Bob will fish them out of the water and bring them back to Port Canaveral, like the booster, where SpaceX will recover them and refurbish them and turn them around for future flights. Now T-minus 11 minutes, 10 seconds and counting for the liftoff of this particular mission, Starlink 6-33. Again, as we approach the final 10 minutes of the count, I want to thank the more than 8,800 of you that are joining us live. If you haven't already, great way to help support what we do and help more people find this live coverage is quick and easy just by hitting the like button. Helps the YouTube algorithm do its thing, and we'll bring more folks to this live coverage as we close in on the last several minutes. Taking a peek at the live chat, want to thank a few more folks for helping support this coverage this evening. Fly with Mike with a $5 super chat. Simple message, fly high. Looking forward to the Falcon 9 doing so in just over 10 minutes. DJ Ladman joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Thank you so much, DJ. DJ and our other channel members have access to live 4K views of all the missions launching from the Cape, as well as discounts at our online shop, shop.spaceflightnow.com, as well as access to member-only videos. United Nations Space Command with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, United Nations. Says, Merry Christmas, everyone. Our birthday's on the 12th as well. Oh, happy early birthday to you. Of course, we do have, if the Heavy stays on target, at least one more launch before your birthday there, and potentially another Starlink as well. Well, we do have at least one more Starlink. There's an east or a West Coast launch, Starlink 7-8. That's set to launch later today, I believe, from Vandenberg Space Force Base, if I'm remembering that correctly. Tomorrow, excuse me. And then we are likely to have another Starlink launch from Pad 40, potentially Sunday as well. So it could be a very busy weekend for us, and we hope you join us for all the launch activity. And finally, Joe 007. Great Bond reference with a $5 super chat. Says, I'm here in Florida for a vacation. This is my first live launch. I'm so excited. Love to hear that. Seeing a launch in person is like nothing else. So hope you enjoy the launch. Hopefully the winds carry the sound toward wherever you happen to be watching from. Enjoy the night. And for those watching in Florida, if you weren't with us earlier in our broadcast when we talked about the trajectory, let's go ahead and run back through that briefly in the last 8 minutes, just so you know where this is going. Of course, the rocket will be launching off Pad 40, flying in a southeasterly trajectory towards the Caribbean. And following stage separation, the first stage booster, tail number 1077, will be landing on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. So go ahead and leave that up for just a few more moments here. For those that didn't happen to be around with us the first time we showed this. T-minus 5 minutes, 55 seconds and counting. The engine chill down sequence is well underway. And the first stage kerosene tank should be full at this point as well. The next major milestone prior to liftoff coming up in just about a minute from now when the strong back retract sequence begins. As we come into the last 5 minutes of the count, want to thank Mr. Nando for $2 super chat saying it's 54 degrees in West Palm and this vodka is keeping me warm. I'm glad you're having a fun night there, Mr. Nando. And Nelson Reyes back with us again with a $10 super chat says thanks once again for the great coverage. Well, thanks, Nelson, for always supporting us. Really appreciate seeing you, sir. Starting to hear some of the pad noises.
Strong back retract has started.
The strong back retract now underway. As you just heard that call out, we'll be getting mission audio from here through the duration of the mission. So if you hear me pause, it's so that we can all hear the call outs as they happen. You see those clamp arms opening up underneath the payload fairings of the Falcon 9 rocket. Transporter erector or the strong back will recline 1.5 degrees away from the vehicle. We'll stay in that position before liftoff. And another great view of the crew and cargo access tower. That tower will come into play next month when SpaceX launches the private astronaut mission to the International Space Station, AX-3, through Axiom Space. A T-minus 3 minutes, 12 seconds and counting. Appreciate the nearly 14,000 or more than 14,000 of you that are joining us for live launch coverage this evening. If you haven't already, to help more folks find this before the launch happens, if you just hit the like button, that would be fabulous. Help the YouTube algorithm do its thing. And our thanks to Rebecca Seelig for a very generous $20 super chat. Says hello from Palm Beach Gardens. Hello to you, Rebecca. Thanks for supporting us this evening.
Stage 1 LOX float is complete.
Here they call it that liquid oxygen loading on the first stage of the Falcon 9 rocket has wrapped up. Coming up around T-minus 1 minute 30 seconds, you should hear that LOX loading on the second stage is also complete, at which point the Falcon 9 will be full with 1 million pounds of propellant. We'll see some venting as well as the ground gas closeout gets underway.
Stage 2 LOX float is complete.
You hear that call out for LOX loading there. And that final venting that I mentioned. And as we approach the final minute of the countdown, at T-minus 1 minute, the Falcon 9's flight computers will take control. Stages 1 and 2 will pressurize for flight. The onboard computer will perform checks of the first stage engine steering system. Everything continues to remain on track for an on-time departure.
Ground gas closeouts.
Of the new T-minus 0 time of 12:07 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 05:07 UTC. Before we hit that last minute, want to thank Soldiers for Life Christian Ministries Good to see you again. $50 super chat. That is exceedingly generous, and we're very appreciative of that. Thank you, soldiers. Also, one of
Falcon
our
9 is in startup.
channel members. Now, T-minus 44 seconds and counting in real time. Should be hearing the call out from the SpaceX launch director that they are go for launch momentarily.
Go for launch.
And there you have it. Now 30 seconds to liftoff. Everything remains on track for the launch of the Starlink 6-33 mission coming up in 20 seconds.
T-minus 30 seconds and counting.
And here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket. The Falcon 9 has cleared the tower, launching the Starlink 6-33 mission, sending 23 Starlink satellites up to low Earth orbit. Now 25 seconds into flight, getting tracking views from Chuck Briggs, as well as our friend Pete Carstens. This is from our Adam Bernstein. We're hearing the rumble of the Merlin engines. Let's listen in. Now 1 minute into flight. Falcon 9 now traveling faster than the speed of sound, getting views from Adam, Pete, and Chuck. The rocket now traveling through the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure. Less than 1 minute left on the burn of the first stage. Those 9 Merlin engines producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Some great views from Chuck there. This is from Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions. Should hear the call for MVAC chill down shortly. It's the process of thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine prior to ignition. Now 2.5 minutes into flight, they receive MECO. Stage separation. That Merlin vacuum engine should be coming on momentarily. There you go. See the delay there on the SpaceX views on the right-hand side. A good view of the Cape before that Merlin ignited. Coming up on fairing separation momentarily. The main image on the left is Pete's camera. And there you see payload fairing deployment, or jettison, as they fall away in Pete's view.
Fairing separation confirmed.
There's the callouts and views from SpaceX. Those Starlink satellites now exposed to the vacuum of space for the first time. Still getting some great tracking views. So you saw the last little glinting of the payload fairings before they fell off the side of the screen. Seeing some stars go by in the background. At T plus 4 minutes and counting, as you see, we have our booster landing countdown, so don't go anywhere. There's another big milestone coming up with the landing of that first stage booster. The next milestone we're watching for is at T plus 6 minutes 10 seconds when the first stage entry burn begins. Because the weather is clear enough tonight, we should be able to see that burn from our on-the-ground tracking cameras. Of course, I'll bring that to you if we can, in fact, see that. That burn lasts just 21 seconds. It'll be followed by the first stage landing burn at T plus 8 minutes and 3 seconds. And we are now just about 3.5 minutes away from the landing of the first stage here. Now more than 5 minutes into flight.
Both vehicles continue to follow nominal trajectories.
We're now less than 30 seconds from the start of the first stage entry burn. Now 6 minutes into flight. Less than 2.5 minutes before the booster landing on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. The entry burn is underway.
Stage 1 entry burn.
Pete's got some views of that. Well done to Pete. You see the entry burn there on the delayed feed from SpaceX. Just a point of note, that's why our count clock is slightly different from
Stage 1 entry shutdown.
from SpaceX's. It's because ours is in real time and SpaceX is on a slight delay of about 10 seconds or so.
Both vehicles continue to follow nominal trajectories.
Now 7 minutes into flight. Coming up in less than a minute, the landing burn will begin.
Stage 1 and Stage 2 FTS have saved.
And our friend Chuck Briggs still has a view of the second stage as it continues on its burn.
Stage 1 transonic.
Landing burn is underway in
Stage 2 is
real time.
terminal guidance.
See that coming up momentarily on the
Stage
SpaceX
1
feed.
landing burn. Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
And touchdown for booster 1077
Stage
there
1 landing confirmed.
on the drone ship. A short fall, or excuse me, just read the instructions. Coming up on Seca 1, second stage engine cutoff.
MVAC shutdown.
And there you hear the call out, and you start to see the burn of the MVAC engine wrapping up there.
Nominal orbit insertion.
That second stage now on a coast phase until T plus 54 minutes 9 seconds, when it will have a 2-second burn. It'll set up satellite deployment at T plus 1 hour 5 minutes and 19 seconds. You see there the empty pad back at Space Launch Complex 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Shortly, SpaceX will start to bring the transporter erector back up into the upright position. It's part of their procedure for turning around the pad as quickly as possible following these launches, and allow them to get ready for the next one coming up in probably about 4 days if past is prologue. It's really been a busy time here on the Space Coast. Want to truck on it over back to Chuck Briggs' view. See United Launch Alliance's Vulcan rocket, which was rolled out to the pad. It feels like it was earlier today. I guess technically it was yesterday. On Wednesday, the rocket rolled out of the vertical integration facility and out to the pad ahead of the wet dress rehearsal. It'll be the last tanking test planned for this rocket before it gets rolled back to the VIF, and Astrobotics lunar lander Peregrine gets integrated on top and will be rolled back out to the pad as ULA is targeting the maiden launch of the Vulcan rocket for Christmas Eve, December 24th. That launch window very finite, though. Just 3 days, the 24th, 25th, and 26th. If for whatever reason weather or technological mishaps do intervene, they would have to pivot to a backup window sometime in January, although ULA has not stated what the launch date options are for January backup. You see one of our mods, Stephanie B, having to sign off for tonight. Thanks so much, Stephanie, for being with us. Really appreciate all you do. Of course, SpaceX is now on the, as far as the East Coast team here, turning their attention to the launch of the USSF 52 mission, sending up the X-37B space plane on a mostly secret mission for an undisclosed amount of time. Last time an X-37B went up, it was on orbit for more than 920 days, and each of these missions have gotten progressively longer. So if that trend does continue on, then we may not see this spacecraft for another few years, but only time will tell. And if it does happen to land back here at the Space Florida launch and landing facility, we will surely hear it with a sonic boom as it comes back into the atmosphere. But there's usually not a heads up when that happens, so we'll just have to keep our eyes and ears open for the return of that space plane when it comes back. Just a quarter of the size of the Space Shuttle orbiters. Of course, we'll have much more coverage on the mission as we lead up into launch and on launch day itself, currently targeting Sunday, December 10th for that. Before we go, want to go ahead and step through the mission stats now that we do have a good launch in the books. This was the 9th flight of a Falcon 9 booster, tail number 1077. The 280th Falcon 9 launch to date. This was the 86th Falcon 9 launch of 2023. The 224th Falcon booster reflight. The 90th SpaceX orbital launch of 2023. The 97th SpaceX orbital launch in the last 365 days. The 159th SpaceX orbital launch from Pad 40, the workhorse for the company. This was the 214th overall orbital launch from this pad, and the 68th orbital launch from Cape Canaveral in 2023. And with that, we are going to go ahead and wrap up our coverage this evening, as we do have another Falcon 9 launch to prepare for later on today. The Starlink 7-8 mission launching from Vandenberg Space Force Base's Space Launch Complex 4 East later on today. Or tomorrow. I keep thinking it's today for some reason, but no, we can go ahead and get some sleep tonight and worry about that tomorrow. Launch on Friday. So we have that to look forward to, and the Falcon Heavy on Sunday, as well as potentially another Starlink from the East Coast on Sunday as well. And for those who are in the Central Florida area and happen to be running the Space Force 10-miler here at the Cape on Saturday, if you happen to see me, go ahead and say hi. I'll be running alongside you, hoping to do better with a 10-miler than I did with the half marathon a couple weeks ago. But, time will tell. We'll all do our best. And if you're out there, hope to say hey. And with that, let's go ahead and close things out. Want to thank our team that has made this happen. Our appreciation to all of our wonderful moderators. Stephanie B., Astro Joe, Dremwolf, Michael Kane out there as well. Thanks to all of you guys for keeping things kosher in the live chat. Our friends Chuck Briggs and Pete Carstens with Max Q Productions for helping us out with tracking views tonight. Our own photographer Adam Bernstein holding down the fort here at the press site at KSC. Also working on some launch photography from this evening, so be sure to check out his Twitter feed as well for some of those photos coming up in just a little bit. Again, here's his handle if you're not already following him, as well as Michael's, our other ace photographer. Coming in right at the buzzer, Rob G with the $5 super chat says, another great launch, great view from Miami. Me and my son stayed up, so thank you. Well, glad you were able to see it with some clear skies, Rob. Hopefully it wasn't too chilly down there in Miami, although I think it's probably warmer there than it is here in the Central Florida area. So I hope you guys had a wonderful launch experience. Thanks, of course, to Stephen Young for running all the technical aspects of the show. I'm Will Robinson Smith. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, we appreciate you joining us for part of your late Wednesday into early Thursday. So go get some rest. Have a great day, rest of the day, or if you are going to bed, get some rest and have a great day, quote unquote, tomorrow when you wake up. And as always, be good to yourself, be good to others, and we will see you next time.